Good day, everyone. So for our Meet 103, I decided to have a pre-recorded video so that everyone could have access. So this video will be divided into two parts, and it will be all included in your final exam. So we will be talking now about the law in the society and how does the law affects our profession. Let's define first what is law. So law is a rule of conduct or action formally recognized as binding and enforced by a controlling authority. So, having said this, the law is a skeleton of our society. It is the structure that makes our society because it is known to everyone and it should be followed by everyone. The law exists because it controls what we do, when we do, and how we do things in order for us to work harmoniously within the society. So if you break the law, since it is regulatory, it is obligatory and mandated, if someone disobeys or breaks the law, there would be a corresponding punishment to it. An orderly society without legal system, even if it is just one simple rule or regulation to follow, would be nothing. Ano lang yung mangyayari? Chaos lang po. A state or a society should have laws to follow so that individuals residing in that state have guides on how should they act. So a system of law can control people on how to operate their lives, and without it, people would be free to make decisions based solely on their principles and their own values and their own beliefs. So they are free kung gusto nilang pumatay, kung gusto nilang manira ng property, kung gusto nilang mag-rape or any violence, pwede nilang gawain. As long as it gives them pleasure or as long as it suited them. Because walang punishment. Walang consequences na pwede nilang makuha. What are the importance of law? Why does law exist in the first place? First, it regulates relationship between conflicting interests. Interest between individuals, interest between states, or it could also be interest between organizations. So, in short, it resolves issues and conflicts. Law also ensures safety not just by the present people but also of our future generation. Without laws, there would be nothing one could do if another were violating their peace and enjoyment. So if this is the case, if someone violates you, since wala siyang punishment, you will be the one to reciprocate violence. Ibabalik mo ulit yung violence. So it will be a cycle. Violence over violence lang siya. So law has its own characteristic. First, a rule of conduct or action which determine what can be done and what cannot be done. It is a guide for us, our actions. Our states embraces only internal acts, how we do things. Yun lang po yung nadjudge. Not the internal thoughts or the internal acts. Yung mga naiisip natin, hindi po yun ginajudge. Law is obligatory, which means that every person is obliged to follow the law. So if a person disobeys it, a punishment is imposed on him or her. And we all know that punishment for disobedience to the law are an effective way of enforcing obedience to the law, just like in our classroom. Once I gave you an activity, if nagbigay ako ng deadline at sinabi ko dito, failure to submit it on this day, activity will no longer be accepted or there is a corresponding deduction. That is the time na you will do your part. Pero pag walang deadline na binigay, pag walang instruction na binigay, chill lang, wala kayong ginagawa. Okay lang. Pero pag may punishment, saka pa kayo kumikilos. Another characteristic of law is it is promulgated or made by the legitimate authority. So here in the Philippines, the Congress, which is the legislative branch of the government, is the legitimate branch which enacts the law. And it is of common observance and benefit. Law is promulgated or ginawa siya to regulate the conduct of men and maintain harmony in the society. So in order to be useful, it must be followed by everybody. It should be known and understood by everybody. So the benefits brought by law are it secures justice, fairness, equality among individuals. resolves social conflict, ensures social order, and it protects interests and controls social relations. Life without law to protect people from violence and other forms of crimes are less safe, less helpful, less orderly, and less wholesome. People will be worrisome, takot. People will be aggressive. And remember, no society can survive without law. So there are types or classifications of law. It is divided in two. We have the natural law and the positive law. So the natural laws are laws that derive from the authority and force of God. So another term for this natural law is eternal law. So law, natural law, is based upon principles and truth which is inherited even before or during the creation of mankind. So it exists and applies anywhere as long as the universe exists. For example po nito is yung law of nature such as the law of gravity. It exists even before creation. Now, under natural law, we have two, physical laws and moral laws. For physical laws, these are considered as the universal rules of action which governs the conduct and movement of material things. So this is also known as the law of nature. While moral laws are set of rules that establish what is right and what is wrong based on our conscience. For positive law naman, pinakamadaling sabihin that positive law is a law made by human. Made by human that is being observed or it specify an action. So we have under this positive law, we have three. We have the divine positive law, divine human positive law, and the human positive law. When we talk about divine positive law, so these are the laws that are promulgated expressly and directly by God Himself, and they are made known to man through revelation. Example of this is the Ten Commandments for the Christian. Divine human positive law is the law that is promulgated by God's representative on earth. Dito sa amin is yung aming mga prophets and pati yung mga priests. Sa inyo po, meron kayong prophet Muhammad sa Muslims. For example of this is yung Ramadan and yung puasa ninyo. While sa amin mga Christian is yung aming ecclesiastical law, which is yung marriage, yung baptism, anointing of the sick, which is done by the representative of our church. And the third is the human positive law, which is promulgated by man in authority. So under this, we have different classifications of human positive law. First, we have public law. So when we say public law, these are human positive law that govern the relationship between the state and its citizen. It could also guide the relationship between states or other countries. Public laws may be classified into the following. We have first the constitutional law. Constitutional law refers to the Constitution or the Constitution of the Philippines, which is the supreme and fundamental law of the state. Fundamental. So it basically defines the powers of the government and the rights of the citizen. This is the highest form of law. Example of this is the 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, which I made you memorize the preamble or the instruction of the 1987 Constitution. Next, we have the criminal law. So when we talk about criminal law, it is the law that defines crimes, treats of their nature, and provides for the punishment. So here, we have the revised penal code wherein nakasulat doon lahat ng klaseng crimes na pwedeng makomit ng isang individual and what are the punishments for the following crimes. Next, we have the administrative law. So it is the law that governs the organizations, competence, and functions of government administrative authorities. So every government administration or departments, meron po yung tinatawag na administrative law. So if ever an employee of a government done a violation, mananagot muna siya doon sa kanilang administrative law before siya maging civil or criminal law. Next, criminal crime rather. Next, we have the election law. which governs the right to suffrage. Yung pagboto, ginawa lang natin. I hope every one of you nakapagboto so that you can exercise and practice your right to suffrage, which is entitled for those who are of legal age. Next, we have the international law. This law governs the relationship between and among states or nations. So, in international law, it states that the rules and policies of every nation, including its scope and as well as its territory, kasama yun doon sa international law. The second classification of human positive law is the private law. From the word itself, private, it only focuses on private individuals, private members, or it guides the relationship between members of the society among the citizens of the state. So they are further classified into civil law, commercial law, and remedial law, and lastly, the contract law. Civil law, these are the laws that regulate the relations that exist among members of the society for the protection of public interest. For example of this is the law on succession, which is found in the Civil Code of the Philippines, Republic Act 386. Next, we have the commercial law. So this law regulates the commercial or business relation among members of the society. Remedial law naman, these are the law that prescribes the methods of setting invasion. It refers to the means and effectuating their judgment, while contract law involves the enforcement of agreements among private individuals or the payment of compensation for failure to fulfill the agreement. So there are two types of contract. Under contract law, we have the express and implied. From the word express, meaning you are giving an agreement orally, verbally, or written. So this express is when two parties discuss and agree orally or in writing the terms and conditions during the creation of the contract. While implied contract is one that has not been explicitly agreed by the parties but the law considered it to exist. So for example nito, ako midwife, nag-apply ako sa isang hospital. The employer may not say that my job is to take care of the patient. Pwedeng hindi niya na yun sabihin, but the fact that I am a health worker and applying for a hospital, it is an implied contract, it is an implied responsibility that I should be the one to take care of my patient. An example of express contract naman is yung contract na pinipirmahan natin na kung saan nakalagay doon yung basic salary natin, what are the deductions, what are your job descriptions. Yun po yung example ng express contract. Now, talking about law, saan ba galing ang law? Paano ba ginagawa ang law? So we have statutes or the statutory law. When we say statutory law, it is a written enactment of the will of the legislative branch of the government rendered authentic by certain prescribed forms or solemnities which are more than known as the Congress, enactment of the Congress. Written enactment or the written law itself is the statutory law. So there are two types of statutory. There are the Constitution and the legislative enactments, which includes the municipal charter, municipal legislation, court rules, administrative rules and orders, legislative rules, and presidential issuances such as executive orders, presidential decree. Those are the statutory law. While jurisprudence or case law is a case decided or written opinion by courts and by persons performing judiciary functions. Ito na yung sa court. It also includes all the rulings of the administrative and legislative tribunals, such as decision made by the President or Senate or House of Tribunals. So sources of law. First, we have the Constitution. So the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines is the fundamental and supreme law of the land. So it is the highest law to which all the other laws must conform. Lahat dapat ng law naka-anchor doon sa ating Constitution. So no law in the country is valid if it is against or in conflict with the Constitution. So this Constitution is binding on all individual citizen and all agencies of the government. So the Constitution must always be obeyed or followed, whether it is right or wrong, unless it is changed by the sovereign power of the people. Next, we have the legislation. Legislation consists of laws enacted by the Congress, so the legislative branch of the government, and ordinances enacted by local government. Example of this is the Midwifery Act or the Republic Act 7392. Third, we have the executive orders, administrative orders, regulations, and rulings. So it is consists of administrative orders, regulations, and rules issued by the administrative officials like the PRC Commissioner, Board of Midwifery, the secretaries of the department. So Secretary of Education, Secretary of Health. So those were the one known as the administrative officials. So under legislative authority pa rin. Administrative rules and regulations are intended to clarify, explain the law, and carry into effect its general provisions. Ano ba yung mga ini-imply niya? They are valid only when they are not contrary to the laws and constitution. Precedents or judicial decisions and jurisprudence, these are the legal system of the Philippines, and it is formed in part by the decisions of the court, particularly the highest court of the law of the land, which is the Supreme Court, and the decision of the Supreme Court are binding on all the subordinate courts, and these are used as basis for the decision of the lower courts. Another source of law is the customs. So when we talk about customs, these are habits and practices which through a long and uninterrupted usage have become acknowledged and approved by society as binding rules of conduct, as long as they are not contrary to the law. Public order or public policy, customs may be applied in the absence of law that is exactly applicable to the point of controversy. For example po ng customs na which is legalized po siya, yung duwaya sa Muslim. Because of your customs, for us Christian, that is illegal. Pag kami Christian nag-asawa ng iba, that is against the law. But for Muslims, because it is their tradition, it is in their customs, it is your practices, it is accepted by the society. So state, bakit kailangan malaman natin kung ano yung state? Because the state follows the law, or the state is the one that obeys the law. When we talk about state, it refers to community of a person with defined territory, a government of their own, and sovereignty. So the elements of the state, we have the people, the territory, the government, and the sovereignty. So people are the one that is permanently inhabiting the territory. Sino yung nakatira doon sa lugar? While the territory naman refers to the definite and fixed portion of the earth permanently inhabited by the people of the state. Lugar, area, kung saan nakatira yung mga people of the state. While government is the agency through which the will of the people of the state is being formulated, expressed, and realized. And lastly, the sovereignty. This refers to supreme and uncontrollable power by which the state is governed. Sovereignty resides in the Filipino people and all government authority that emanates from them. So inherited power of the state, we have the police power. When we say police power, this refers to the power of the state which regulates rights, privileges, and property for the promotion of the general welfare. So an example of this is the regulation of the practice of the midwifery, the 7392, the Republic Act 7392, which regulates the practice of midwifery by allowing only those are qualified and competent midwives to practice professionally, and that is to ensure and safeguard the welfare of the society. Next, power of eminent domain. This is the power of the state to take private property for public use upon payment of just compensation. So, pwede po kunin ng government yung isang private on. Just be sure that the owner of that area or that land is compensated. Binayaran. Next, power of taxation. So, this refers to the power of the state to demand contributions from the people in exchange for the protection and services it provides to them. Dati, yung hindi pa nare-revise yung taxation, lahat ng mga single, lahat ng minimum wage earner, lahat ng isa o dalawa lang ang anak is may tax na binabayaran. Ngayon kasi, meron tayong, kumbaga pa naka-bracket siya kung ilan dapat yung nare-receive mo monthly, saka ka lang babawasan ng tax. But, hindi lang po yun sa sahod. Including our basic goods, basic needs, taxable po yun. Yung ating mga pagkain binibili sa grocery, meron po yung tax. Doon kinukuha yung mga ginagastos yung mga binabayad sa ating mga public services. Kagaya na lang ng public hospitals, yung ating mga barangay health units, even our officials. So there are three branches of the government. First, we have the legislative branch. So legislative branch, this refers to the Congress of the Philippines, so which is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. So the Constitution vests this branch with legislative power, meaning legislative branch is the one that makes the law, while executive branch naman refers to the executive departments, and it is headed by the President of the Philippines, who is also known as the Chief Executive. So the Constitution, this branch is vested by the Constitution to the executive power, meaning the power to execute or implement the laws of the land. That is why every laws enacted by the Congress or made by the Congress should be approved by the President. Without the approval of the President, wala pong mapapasa na law. Next, we have the judicial branch. This is the judiciary power of the Supreme Court of the Philippines and other court established by law. So the Constitution vests this judiciary with judicial power, which is the power to interpret and apply the laws. So legislative branch, sila yung gumagawa ng batas. Executive branch, sila naman siya yung nag-i-implement, siya yung nag-a-approve, siya yung nag-i-execute ng batas. While judicial branch naman, sila yung nag-i-interpret and they are the one that applies the law. So talking about law, kaakibat nito is right, karapatan. So if you violate the rights of an individual, you are violating the law. So when we talk about right, it refers to moral power residing in a person of doing, possessing, or requiring something which power all others to be bound to respect. Meaning, everyone should respect our rights because it is ours. It is something to which one has just claimed, the power or privilege to which one is justly entitled. And rights are the cause of truth and justice, fairness, equality. So legal rights. Talking about rights, legal rights are rights of a person conferred or protected by the state and which other person in the community must respect. These rights can be enforced by legal means. For example na lang nito, the right to suffrage is conferred by the state. Karapatan ng bawat tao, the right to be born, the right to life is protected also by the state. So yan yung halimbawa ng ating mga legal rights. Legal responsibilities of a midwife, not only to our patient but also to our community and society. So midwives assume legal responsibility during the practice of her profession. Kaya nga, dapat competent tayo because we are responsible. If we are called professional, therefore, we are responsible of our actions, especially when we are practicing our profession. So it is more important that the midwife knows what she is doing and has the necessary skills to perform her duties in the care of patients. Midwife should also perform her task easier if she knows her legal responsibilities because she knows how to conduct herself legally. She knows her right, she knows her scope, she knows her limitations. So avoid criminal liability due to incompetence and negligence is one of the legal responsibilities, not only by midwife but all professionals. Be careful in the execution of her duties. Care is important. A midwife should always remember that she should only apply her skills that are within her scope of function in the care of the patient. So every position that a midwife will handle is paired with legal exemption. Don't go overboard or beyond your scope, or else you will be liable to what will happen to your patient, or if something might happen to your patient if you go beyond your scope. Hindi ka na mapapagtanggol ng lisensya mo. Kasi as a professional, you are obliged to know what is your scope and limitation. So in connection or in continuation of the discussion regarding laws in the societies, here are some of the laws, orders, presidential decrees, which have an effect or it affects the practice of midwifery. So let's discuss it one by one. First, we have the executive order. So what does this executive order means? The executive order is an order issued by the executive branch of the government in order to implement a constitutional mandate or a statutory provisions or the law. So EOs are issued by the President of the Philippines, who heads the executive branch of the government. So examples of this EO are the Milk Code or the National Code on the Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, Breast Milk Supplement, and other related products. So this law aims to provide safe and adequate nutrition for infants by protection and promotion of breast milk, and also by ensuring the proper use of breast milk substitute. So, important provisions of the EO 51 is that manufacturers and distributors shall not be permitted to give examples and supplies of breast milk substitutes such as yung samples of milk powder, even ball pens or yung mga giveaways or sponsorship travel. Bawal po yun sa public health workers and even in private, yung mga clinics na nagre-render ng mga services. Bawal po yun actually na tumanggap. Next, we have another provisions is that health workers and community workers shall emphasize to mothers the hazard, risk, as well as the hazard and risk of breast milk substitute, as well as it should be emphasized to the mother that still the breast milk is the best for babies. Kaya nga 'di ba sa mga labels ng mga gatas, yung mga breast milk substitute nakalagay doon, dapat indicated doon sa labas sa box nila that this product is not intended to replace breast milk, or sa mga patalastas na sinasabi or nakalagay doon, breastfeeding is best for your babies pa rin. Bakit po siya kailangang ilagay? Because according to EO 51, labels and containers of breast milk substitute should not discourage breastfeeding. Yun po yung main goal nila. Always encourage yung mother to support breastfeeding practices. Another executive order is the EO 209, which is the Family Code. So important provisions are included. Important provisions which is included in the family codes is first, the marriage, which is a special contract of permanent union between man and a woman, which entered into accordance with law. So a marriage is considered a law for the establishment of conjugal and family life. That's why when you get married to someone, you become one. Conjugal na yung pagsasama ninyo, pagmamay-ari ninyo. Next, we have the letter of instruction. So, letter of instruction is an order issued by the President that serves as a guide to his previous decree, the presidential decree or order. So, example of this is the LOI number 47, which directs all schools of midwifery together with the social work, nursing, medicine, and all other allied medical profession to include family planning in the curriculum. So, kailangan makareceive ng family planning education, maintindihan ng mga future health workers or allied health professions ang family planning. So, LOI 949 naman is the law which create the primary health care system. That is an example of letter of instruction. Next, we have the presidential decree. When we say presidential decree, it is an order made by the president. So, presidential decree allows the president to act as a legislator. When we say legislator, it gives the president the power to implement or make a law. For example, PD number 825. So this law provides penalty for improper garbage disposal and other forms of uncleanliness. For the PD 996 naman, this law provides compulsory basic immunization for children and infants below 8 years old. So PD 965, applicants for marriage license should have received instruction on family planning and responsible parenthood. While PD 651 refers to the birth and death registration. So meaning, if you are a private practicing midwife and if you have handled delivery, so according to this, all babies born in the hospital, maternity clinics, private homes, or elsewhere, irrespective of the nationality or race, culture, and religion of belief of their parents, whether the mother is a permanent resident or transient in the Philippines, must be reported for the registration in the office of the local civil registrar of the place of birth by the physician, nurse, midwife, hilot, or anyone that is present on the delivery. And it should be reported within 30 days after birth. So in this presidential decree, it also states that birth certificates shall be prerequisite for enrollment in the first grade in all public and private schools in the Philippines. For the registration of birth naman, same as with the registration of birth. So anyone who died, all persons who died irrespective of the nationality, race, culture, belief, whether a permanent or a transient individual in the Philippines, lahat po ng namamatay should be reported for registration by the physician who attended the deceased or in default thereof by the nearest responsible relative within 48 hours to the local health officers. Dito sa atin yun po yun sa City Health, who shall then issue the corresponding certificate of death and order its registration in the office. So yun po yung ating PD 651 or the birth and death registration. So PD 856 naman is the Code of Sanitation, while PD 223 is the law that created the Professional Regulation Commission. So PD 148 is a woman and child labor law, which provides for the privileges of working women in the states that no child below 14 years old shall be employed. PD 442, it refers to the labor code which promotes and protect employees, self-organization, and collective bargaining rights. That is our labor code. So for PD 603, this is the Child and Youth Welfare Code, which protects the rights and promote the welfare of the citizen. Other presidential decree is the PD 46, which is the Anti-Graft and Corruption Law, which is applicable for the public officials or the public authorities. So, anti-graft and corruption law is made punishable for any public official or employee, whether of the national or local government. So, this is to receive directly or indirectly and for private reasons, to give private or personal reasons, to give, offer to give any gift, present, or other valuable things on any occasion, including Christmas, when such gift, present, or other valuable things is given by reason of his official possession, regardless of whether or not the same is for past favors or the giver hopes or expect to receive a favor or better treatment in the future from the public official or employee concerned in the discharge of his official functions. In short, bribery, yung pagtanggap mo ng kahit na anong regalo, personally, is a form of anti-graft and it's a form of graft and corruption rather. Next, we have this PD 147, which declares April 21 and May PD 21 and the month of May as the National Immunization Days, while PD 4226 is the law that imposing all hospital should be licensed by the Department of Health before it operates. Proclamation. So a proclamation is an official declaration by the chief executive or the president of the Philippines on certain programs, projects, and situations. For example of this is the proclamation number 1275, which states that Midwifery Week is to be celebrated every third week of October, while proclamation number 6 is the UN's goal of universal child immunization, which involves the non-government organization in the immunization program. Proclamation number 499 naman is a National AIDS Awareness Day. So next, we have the Republic Act. Republic Act is an act passed by the Congress of the Philippines, which is the legislative branch, while the form of the government is a republican state. Example of this is the RA 1080, wherein it states that professionals who pass the board and bar exams are civil service eligible. Next, we have the RA 1082, which is the Rural Health Act, the law that provides for the creation of rural health units all over the country with the goal of promoting the health and well-being of the rural population. Next, we have the RA 2644 or the old midwifery law, which was replaced by the RA 7392 or the Midwifery Act of 1992. Next, we have the RA 3573, which is the law on reporting communicable diseases. So this law provides that any person may be inoculated, administered, or injected with prophylactic preparations in order to prevent or suppress the communicable disease, and that no person shall refuse as to hinder or obstruct in any way such protective measures as may be deemed advisable by the Director of Health or his authorized representative. Gaya na lang po na nangyari during this pandemic, wherein kapag infected ka po ng COVID-19, you are obliged to have a self-quarantine. Magpa-quarantine, mag-isolate. If you are proven to be infected, positive COVID-19 case, at nalaman na naglabas-labas ka, you can be punished by it because of this Republic Act 3573. Next, we have RA 4073. It is an act that liberalized the treatment of leprosy. Except na lang kapag sinertify ng Secretary of Health na yung stage of disease requires institutional treatment. Ano po bang ibig sabihin nito? Ibig sabihin yung mga leprosy patient natin, hindi po kailangan i-confine or i-isolate sa isang leprosarium. Provided that they are treated in any government skin clinic, rural health unit, or by a duty licensed physician. Yun po yung sinasabi ng RA 4073. RA 6425 naman refers to the Dangerous Drug Acts of 1972. RA 7305, the Magna Carta of Public Health Workers, and RA 7600 is the Rooming In and Breastfeeding Act of 1992. Take note of those Republic Act, the PDs, and the EOs that would be included in our final exam. RA 9255, allowing illegitimate child to use surname of their father. So this has amended the presidential decree, the Executive Order number 209, otherwise known as the Family Code of the Philippines, wherein doon sa Executive Order 209, it states that the illegitimate child or the child that is born outside of marriage should follow the surname or should use the surname of the mother. Here in Republic Act 9255, this is an act allowing illegitimate children to use the surname of their father. RA 29262 refers to the violence against women and their children. Ito na yung VAUSI. RA 9288 refers to comprehensive policy and the national system for ensuring newborn screening, the essentiality. So, yung important provisions nito is to ensure that all infants, all newborns should be tested with newborn screening. RA 9346 naman, an act prohibiting the imposition of death penalty in the Philippines. That is why wala na po yung death penalty dito sa atin. Instead, meron na lang tayong reclusion perpetua or yung lifetime. So when the law violate makes use of the nomenclature of the penalties of the revised penal code or the penalty of life imprisonment, when the law violated does not make use of the nomenclature of the penalties of the revised penal code. Yun na yung life imprisonment. Next, we have the 9439, RA number 9439, which is an act prohibiting the detention of the patient in hospitals as well as in the medical clinics on grounds of non-payment of hospital bills or medical expenses. Kaya nga hindi tayo pwedeng ikulong sa hospital or hindi palabasin sa isang hospital or sa facility dahil lang sa reason na hindi tayo nakabayad, because that is against the right of an individual to travel or yung right of liberty ng isang individual. Hindi po tayo pwedeng sabihan ng hospital, ay hindi ka pa nakapagbayad, hindi ka namin pauuwiin. Hindi po yun pwede. That is against the law. Now, due process. When we file a lawsuit, pag nagkakaso tayo, and when we talk about law, this law follows a certain due process. So before we start with this, we have to know what are the words used in due process. First, we have arrest, which means taking of a person into custody in order that he may be bound to answer for the commission of an offense. So, kapag nagkakaroon tayo ng arrest, a warrant of arrest is necessary to arrest a person. After the issuance of the arrest, it is the duty of the arresting officer to inform the arrested person of his right to remain silent and to be assisted by a counsel, preferably of his own choice, and take the person before the judge without unnecessary delay. Ito na yung sinasabi, may karapatan kang manahimik. May karapatan kang manahimik at pumili ng abogado. Kung hindi mo kayang magbayad ng abogado, ang gobyerno ang siyang magbibigay sa iyo. Yun yung sinasabi. So, any evidence obtained in violation of the rights of the person in custody is not admissible in any proceedings. Next, we have bail. Ano po yung ibig sabihin ng bail? In Tagalog, piyansa. Bail is a security given for a temporary release of a person who is arrested. So, all person in custody shall be entitled to bail. Lahat po pwedeng mag-bail before final conviction except meron tayong exception, those charged with capital offense such as murder, which is punishable by reclusion perpetua or death dati. Pero dahil meron na tayong Republic Act na pinagbabawalan yung death, hindi na po yun siya applicable ngayon. And when the evidence of guilt is strong, yun na yung res ipsa loquitur. Hindi na po yun hinahayaang makapag-bail. The court, ano naman itong court? So the court is the one that decides and pronounce the judgment. Siya yung gumagawa ng hearing. And carry it into effect between two persons and parties who brings a case before its decision. So the function of the court is to determine a controversy between two litigants or disputants is called judicial power. So a lawsuit, in order for us to have hearings, kailangan meron kang lawsuit. Mabigat na kaso. So, what happens in this lawsuit? Nagkakaroon po ng bangayan, questioning. So, when we say lawsuit, lawsuit or action means an ordinary suit in a court of justice by which one party prosecutes another for the enforcement of protection of a right or the prevention or redress or correction of a wrong. So, if merong lawsuit, kailangan meron tayong plaintiff, which is the complainant. Pag sinabi nating plaintiff, this is the person who files a case against another. Or, in short, we have the accuser. Plaintiff, synonym niya, complainant and accuser. While, pag sinabi mo namang respondent, this is the defendant, the accused, the person against whom the case is filed. Pinag-akusahan. Next, we have pleadings. Ano naman itong pleadings? Sinumpaang salaysay in Tagalog. These are written allegations of the parties to a civil or criminal case of their respective claims and defenses, submitted to the court for trial and judgment. Pleadings include complaints, the counterclaim, the answer, the cross-claim, the reply, the third-party complaints, and other similar complaints. So, it is written. Kaya yung mga attorneys nag-i-interview, sinusulat po yun nila. So, pag sinabi natin complaint, it refers to a concise statement of the ultimate facts consisting the plaintiff's cause or causes of action. So, it is a sworn written statement charging a person of the offense. It is a concise statement kung ano yung nangyari of the ultimate facts constituting the plaintiff's cause or causes of action. So, plea. Ano naman yung plea? Diba? Pag nagtatanong before mag-start yung hearing, tinatanong muna yung accused, yung ating respondent, what is your plea? So, ang isasagot niya lang doon is if he is guilty or not guilty. So, plea is the answer of the defendant to a complaint. No other answers doon. So, due process. Due process is a law which hears before it condemns. So according to the Bill of Rights of the Constitution, it states that no person shall be held to answer for a criminal offense without due process of law. Meaning, wala pong taong agad na pinapatawan ng kasalanan hanggat hindi po siya na nagkakaroon ng due process or hindi siya natatrial. Yun po yung ibig sabihin nun. So, due process of law means a law which hears before it condemns. Pinapakinggan niya muna bawat panig before siya magkaroon ng judgment. With this, it proceeds upon inquiry and it renders judgment only after the trial. So, due process of law consists of first, a law creating or defining an offense. Ano yung ginawa niyang offense? Meron bang law against that offense? So, an impartial tribunal or competent jurisdiction. Accusation in due form. Notice and opportunity to defend. May karapatan siyang ipagtanggol. Trial according to established procedure. And discharge unless found guilty. So kung wala, kulang yung ebidensya, hindi sapat yung ebidensyang ipinakita na magko-convict doon sa isang tao, kailangan siyang i-discharge or palayain. Constitutional rights of the accused. First, to presume innocent until the contrary is proven beyond reasonable doubt or until guilty. Presume innocent until the contrary is proven guilty. Hindi po siya pwedeng sabihan na siya na ang may kasalanan. To be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation against him. That's why, bago mo siya hulihin, pag nagkakaroon kayo ng warrant of arrest, sinasabi, ikaw ay na-aresto sa salang murder, ikaw ay na-aresto. Bakit po? It is their right. Still, kahit na-accused sila, they still have the right to know what they have done. To be present and defend in person and by counsel every stage of the proceeding. Kaya nga, kapag hindi nila kayang magbayad ng sarili nilang abogado, binibigyan po sila ng gobyerno ng free, mga pro bono. Binibigyan sila ng gobyerno ng kanilang sariling abogado to defend them in a lawsuit. To testify as witness in his own behalf. Siya mismo yung magiging witness niya. To confront and examine the witness against himself is another right of the accused, and to confront and examine the witness against him at the trial. The accused also has the free access of the court and the quasi-judicial bodies and adequate legal assistance. The accused also has the right to be informed of his right to remain silent and to competent and independent counsel, preferably on his own choice. If the person cannot afford the services of a counsel, the state will provide him one. No torture, force, violence, threat, intimidation, or any other means which vitiate the free will shall be used against him. Bawal po yun. Police brutality, bawal po yun. Kasali po yun dito. Excessive fees shall not also be imposed, and no person shall be put twice in jeopardy of punishment for the same offense. Another definition of term is the subpoena. So this subpoena is a process directed to a person requiring him to attend and to testify at the hearing of the trial of an action. So any investigation conducted under the law of the Philippines or for taking of his disposition. Pag sinabi mong subpoena, tao yung pinapatawag para mag-testify sa court. Pag sinabi mo namang subpoena duces tecum, yun na yung napag-aralan natin during prelim, subpoena duces tecum, it means that you have to provide evidence, documents that serves as evidence on the lawsuit. Nakuha ko ba? Subpoena, tao, subpoena duces tecum, evidences. So, how can you avoid lawsuit? How will we avoid lawsuit? First is, know your scope and limitations, syempre. If you're working within your scope and limitations, you are aware, you are legally aware of your responsibility. If you go beyond that, then meron kang pwedeng maging problema. If ever merong lawsuit, kasi hindi mo na yung trabaho. It is beyond your scope and limitations. Be competent. Pag sinabi mong competent, nandun na yung confidence, knowledgeable, and care. You should know what you are doing for you to avoid being sued. Tinanong ko yan sa inyo during the previous lectures. Kahit po may lisensya ka, remember, license is not a permanent right but only a privilege na once meron kang na-violate, it can be taken away from you. So your only your only guide, your only way to avoid lawsuit is to be aware, to be competent, and to know your scope and limitation. So how can you be competent? Always update knowledge and skills with latest trends in patient care by training, seminars, and workshop. Kailangan po yun. Growth and development. Venue. So venue is a designated place in which court having jurisdiction may in the first instance properly hear and determine the cause. So it is the place where the case is to be heard or saan magkakaroon ng trial. Next we have the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is an authority but which officers hear and decide legal controversy. Evidences naman are evidence, it means of ascertaining in a judicial proceeding the truth respecting the matter of fact. So there are different kinds of evidences. We have the object or real evidence. Real evidence. So these are objects which may be exhibited to or yung ipakita mo sa korte, examined or viewed by the court. Halimbawa nito, yung baril na ginamit, halimbawa, binaril mo yung biktima. Yung baril na ginamit mo is the object or real evidence. What else? Halimbawa doon sa ating res ipsa loquitur kung saan nagkaroon ng surgery tapos naiwan yung sponge. Yung sponge can be of real evidence doon. Next, we have documentary evidence. So these are documents pertaining to documents as evidence which consist of writings or any materials containing letter, words, numbers, figures, or other modes of written expression. Sa atin, pinaka-importante as health workers are the patient charts, birth certificate, as well as the written contracts. Kasama po dito yung consent before tayo gagawa ng isang procedure. Patient's chart is very important. That's why hindi ka po pwede maging routine. Kapag gumagawa kayo ng patient charts, although sa hospital, only nurses are allowed to do the charts. Nurses notes yung tawag namin dun sa hospital. But if you are a private practicing midwife, meron po tayong ginagawang patient chart that it should be narrative. Meaning, kung ano dapat yung ginawa mo pagkasunod-sunod doon sa patient, simula sa pagdating, simula sa pagkasabi, paano mo siya inassess, anong sinabi niya sa'yo upon arrival. Ano yung kondisyon ng pasyente, it should be written. So, halimbawa nito, when you do patient chart, midwifery notes, ganito po yon. Receive patient ambulatory kapag naglalakad pa. Kapag hindi na, receive patient per wheelchair complaining of abdominal pain. So, assess patient taken, vital signs taken, BP, weight, temperature. Position patient at the delivery table. IE done. Lagay mo doon, IE done. Dilatation shows 9 cm. If what do we call this? The dilatation and yung pagnipis na I forgot the term. Basta lahat dapat ng sinusulat mo sa patient chart should be narrative and in order kung ano yung pagkakagawa mo. Dapat hindi mo yun kinakalimutan because that could be an evidence if ever merong mangyari. Next, we have the testimonial evidence. Pag sinabi mo namang testimonial evidence, this refers to the declaration of a witness. So, a witness can testify only to the facts which he has personal knowledge. Dapat siya mismo ang may alam. Hindi pwedeng kasi sinabi sa kanya ni ganito, na ganito, ni ganito. That is what you call hearsay evidence or a repetition of what the witness heard from what others have said. So, hindi po yun siya pwede and not admissible by the court. Next, we have the privileged communication. Ano naman po itong privileged communication? A private communication made by a patient to a midwife is a privileged communication. So, this type of evidence is inadmissible in court as evidence. Midwife tayo, to be a witness, pwede tayong mag-refuse na sumagot. So if a midwife sees that the question and her answer to it may lead to incriminate herself or madidiin siya, pwedeng hindi siya sumagot. So, midwife has the right to refuse to answer the question on the basis of her constitutional right, which is the right against self-incrimination. And because she is under oath, a midwife acting as a witness must answer question truthfully. Pwedeng sabihin niyang hindi na lang, I invoke myself to self-incrimination. Pwedeng ganon. Mas mabuti pa yung ganon kaysa magsinungaling siya. Because if nagsinungaling ka, nagbigay ka ng false statement, pwede ka pong kasuhan ng perjury. Next, we have this dying declaration. Usually, itong mga dying declaration, ito yung mga tinatawag na star witness. So, the declaration of a dying person, provided such person knows that he or she is about to die, may be received in a case where his death is the subject of the inquiry as evidence of the cause and surrounding circumstances of the death. It is the duty of the midwife who attended a patient and heard his dying declaration to record in the patient's chart accurately and correctly. So, lahat po, verbally, kung paano niya sinabi, yun po yung isusulat mo sa chart. So, how do they examine a witness? So, we have different ways of examination of a witness. Direct examination. So, pag sinabi mong direct examination, it is done by the presenting party on the facts relevant to the issue. Ibig sabihin, ang nagtatanong nito is yung abogado mo mismo. Abogado ng accuser. While cross-examination naman is examination of the witness by the opponent or adverse party. Ibig sabihin mo, yung kalaban, yung counsel ng kalaban ang nagtatanong. That is cross-examination. Affidavit naman is a sworn statement or written declaration that is made in writing upon oath before an authorized officer. And lastly, the false testimony. Ito na yung sinasabi ko kanina na kapag sinungaling ka, nagbigay ka ng false statement at under oath ka, you can be sued or you can be you are liable for perjury. Next, we have judgment. So, judgment refers to the decision or sentence of the law given by the court of justice. Judgment based on trial, decision. Judgment is based on trial. So, it is done after or what has happened during the trial. So after issues on the case are raised and joined, and after evidence are heard, the judge considers the case and renders his decision. Decision is a judgment based on trial. A judgment rendered by a judge is termed as decision, while pag sinabi mo namang verdict, this is a judgment rendered by a jury. So pag sinabi mong judgment, the term judgment includes a judgment of conviction or of acquittal. So judgment of acquittal is rendered when the person accused is found innocent, while conviction is rendered if the accused is found guilty. So, lahat ng judgment must be in writing and shall contain statement of facts on which the judgment is based. Bakit po naging ganito yung desisyon ng korte? Meron po dapat yang, kumbaga pa, reasons na nakasulat. Ano yung nakita ng judge? Bakit nahatulan ng guilty itong taong ito? Next, we have appeal. Siyempre, after ng kaso, merong nananalo, merong natatalo. Parang election lang yan. So, if ever yung isang partido, it's either the accuser or the accused is not satisfied with the result or with the decision, they can make or file an appeal to a higher court. Usually, this is the Supreme Court. So, it is done to secure review of a judgment or to order a decree of an inferior court. So, it must be made 15 days after judgment is rendered. So, beyond 15 days, baka hindi na siya i-consider. So, appellant is what you call the party which bring the case to the appellate court, yung mag-appeal. While appeal naman is the adverse party. Usually, ito yung mga nananalo sa kaso, yung mga appeal. So I guess that would be all for the laws. Next video, we will be talking about the crimes as well as the contracts of involvement of a midwife. So hopefully you have learned something, and I will give an activity after you watch this video. So once again, thank you and have a nice day.